Final Fantasy VII has one of the most iconic soundtracks in history. There's a reason that the battle, victory, and final boss theme are constantly thrown into random videos on the internet. So when 2015 rolls around and Square Enix decides it's high time to remake the classic 90s experience, their music team has to come together to breathe new life into the soundtrack that defined an entire genre. The result? Final Fantasy VII released in 1997 on the PlayStation 1, and Final Fantasy VII Remake released in 2020 on the PlayStation 4, with its sequel, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, releasing in 2024 on the PS5. The remake was conceptualized as a trilogy of games, and the third is likely releasing around 2026 to 2028. The trilogy's music team is composed of over 40 incredibly talented artists, either making brand new music or reorchestrating the original game's score, bringing their absolute A-game to deliver what is possibly the greatest musical experience to come out of a game released in the last decade. How the hell do they do it? Well, today I decided to finally put my rambling thoughts about the soundtrack that literally changed my perspective of music into a way too long video essay. Here's why I think that this game's soundtrack is pretty cool, and my absolute favorite in the gaming industry. This game does a lot of cool stuff with its music, but we should probably talk about the more universally appealing and less technically complicated aspects first. Obviously, the lifeblood of this game's soundtrack is its orchestral music, which is the claim to fame for the entire franchise, but it's shocking just how many other genres and variations on those genres are used in this game. And it's especially shocking just how good every approach is. In this one game alone, you get bombastic cinematic orchestral, heartfelt jazz, swinging jazz, seductive jazz, big band jazz, bossa nova, parade march, bebop over top of electronic, electropop, mellow electronic, heavy synth lead with orchestral backing, orchestral with rock backing, rock with orchestral backing, rock, acoustic rock, hard rock, ambient orchestral, the Soaring Cue from Epcot, triumphant orchestral, orchestral to make you cry, orchestral to make you brown your pants, tribal but you pissed off the tribe in question. There's hero music, villain music, horror villain music, triumphant themes, cinematic themes, ambient themes, showstoppers, Broadway looking, rock ballads, love ballads, solo piano, symphonic. Point made. There's a large variety of music and it's all really, really well made. Anyone playing this game will come away with some song that stood out.
The music.
The underside of
the music. Oh, okay.
I'm gonna cry.
DJ's actually
It's a new game. Oh my god!
Whoa!
Whoa! Crank this.
Oh my.
That chanting is so good.
Wow, icebreaking moments. Oh. Oh, there's music, bro, what the?
And yet there's still enough connective tissue between it all to make it truly feel like it lives and breathes inside of the same entity, rather than just being a bunch of random music that they threw in there just for the sake of random music. Being a video game that released in 2020 versus 1997 gives it the wonderful technology of today that has been advancing over the past 20 years of gaming. The developers are able to record music and then use those audio files in some incredibly complicated ways, such as being adaptive to the action of the game. In the original game, outside of choice encounters, every single fight had the same piece of music. So you'll be messing around in some area when suddenly... Yeah, it's just a little bit jarring. It works, obviously. Having a high-intensity piece of music fits the fight far more than the music that was playing before, but it completely sucks you out of the location, which ruins the immersion. But what if the immersion and the tone worked together? What if it were the same piece, but more intense? Nearly every area in the remake has a normal theme with a more intense battle variation, usually featuring bigger, louder, higher-pitched instruments and a driving percussion, but the tempo matches that of the original so it can seamlessly go between roaming and fighting states. Sometimes there's even a third variation, one to match a brand new tone established by a new part of the location. They still kept the original battle theme, saving it for specific quest encounters to make those moments stick out. In case that wasn't enough, they even snuck in that old battle theme in some new battle arrangements. If you think that's cool, we got an entire section dedicated to the referential side of this soundtrack. But before we get there, we need to talk about why the boss themes are 7 minutes long on the soundtrack.
Heads up. What in the hell?
Bosses are fought in phases, ranging from 3 to 10. So keeping with the theme of cranking the intensity, every phase introduces a new song, blended to flow seamlessly from phase to phase. The usual trend of these bosses goes a traditional first phase, setting up how the musical identity of the rest of the boss fight will go, a second phase with a slightly different tone that still captures the first wave's identity, and a final phase that ups the tempo and goes completely wild. The progression these phases go in create a feeling of the enemy growing stronger and fighting harder to undermine your efforts. This approach to scoring a single fight takes a lot of time and effort, as cranking out music as technically complicated as these to the same scale and amount costs a lot, but it is undeniably worth it to provide players with a cinematic scale and engagement with the gameplay that is so much higher than a normal boss that simply uses the same piece of boss music that doesn't really go anywhere during the fight.
Who's there? Door!
Final Fantasy VII Remake knows how big this game is. They know how hungry the fans are to dig into this updated cinematic experience of the story they know and love. So the music department weaponizes their excitement and drips that anticipation hard. That battle theme that played throughout the entire 40-hour experience of the original PlayStation 1 game has been ingrained into the minds of players. So naturally, it's the most important song for the remake devs to get right. So the game starts, and okay, this is the first encounter. It's just using the bombing mission music. Nah, it's no big deal. The original did as well. All right, here we go. Cutscene encounter past the bombing mission music. This is gonna be it. Okay, it's just a new song that uses that one section of the original theme. All right, cool. Okay, we're inside the Mako reactor. This is where we heard that battle theme for the first time in the original. This is gonna be it. No, it's a battle variation on the Mako reactor theme. Okay, we get to the first boss, and wow, that was a great arrangement of the bombing mission theme. Getaway music, cool. Bombing mission again, cool. Reactor blows up, now we're out in the city, and we get some somber music, fitting. We meet this random girl, who I'm sure isn't important. We get a subtle arrangement of her theme song. Oh, they're gonna do it! They're finally dropping the fight theme! Why are we changing the melody? This isn't, guys, this isn't the theme. What is it? This is the same tempo, and it has a tauntingly similar structure, but the notes are all off. This isn't the song. All right, here we go, new fight theme. It's the bombing mission again! This single musical moment would not have been nearly as exciting if it weren't for the intense anticipation created by the developers. There were tons of great moments in the original based on its music, but this? Not even 2 hours into Remake and it's already a dream come true. This anticipative technique is a choice that I have never seen in a video game soundtrack before, and I don't think I ever will again. Final Fantasy VII Remake is one of the biggest deals in video game history, and its music is iconic and beloved enough to have some really funky techniques thrown in to make the experience even better. Sure, games in a long-running franchise will reference itself for the sake of nods and remixes, but it's never been on this scale before. Speaking of scale... Video games are starting to incorporate scoring techniques that were beforehand exclusive to film. And while that has been to the detriment of those big budget AAA games like Uncharted and Spider-Man with truly boring tone music, Square Enix's music team takes the magical melodies of the past and gives them the cinematic scale of the present. There are two main kinds of music in a movie, diegetic and non-diegetic. Diegetic is heard by and interacted with the characters, while non-diegetic is music that only the audience hears, created to accentuate the tone of what is happening on screen. What we have been talking about so far has all been non-diegetic, but I wanted to stop and take a moment to talk about the diegetic music in Remake. Random shops, inns, or streets around town will have some music playing, sometimes being played by the NPCs. This music is heard by both the player and the characters in the game, and it adds to the immersion tenfold, making the world feel bigger and more realized.
It's safer down here than on the... Feeling a lot better. Should I head home or swing by Wall Market?
One of the coolest diegetic moments is when this flamboyant king steals the army's marching band to play some electric big band jazz music to score his fight with Cloud. What in the hell? Another scoring technique that plays a big part of Final Fantasy VII Remake's music is called a leitmotifs. A leitmotif is a recurring piece of music that is used to represent something. Could be a character, place, feeling, anything that the composer wants to have musically represented. Up to this point, Final Fantasy VII and its many games, and one movie, have been utilizing leitmotifs in their scores, with many themes being taken directly from the original game alongside new ones. So in this remake that attempts to bring in everything from the rest of the compilation, the music team not only decides to use music from that original PlayStation game, but also the prequel game, the sequel movie, the sequel game to the movie, second prequel game, OVA short, and then brand new character themes or even old characters with brand new themes. Oh boy. And those themes are including, but not limited to, the Livestream, Shinra, Cloud, Tifa, Elf, Barrett, the Ancients, the Remnants, Jesse, Vincent, WRL, Sukubos, Starnova, Hojo, Chadley, Denzel, Wisp, Team Glenn from the mobile game. It's one thing to have a character or location theme in a piece of cutscene music. Big whoop, movies have been doing it for a century. Where this game uses leitmotifs to its ultimate capacity is in the boss music. Let me explain. Remember those 3 to 10 phase boss fights I mentioned earlier? This game does more than ramp up the intensity based on how many instruments are playing. They will start pulling other pieces of music to score the fight based on what's going on. To show what I'm talking about, I'm going to use what should have been this game's final boss, Rufus Shinra. After an adventure with a mix of jazz, rock, pop, electronic, and so many other different tones and leitmotifs thrown into the mix of the score, the final fight, on this grand adventure uses the same imposing motif that has dominated the soundtrack in the same genre that has scored the most cinematic of moments. This is already a big deal. The motifs used in this fight are the boss theme and Shinra's theme, since you're literally fighting the boss of Shinra, but it's orchestrated in a way in which the two motifs blend and flow around each other, almost as if the two sides of the song are musically duking it out. The feeling of hearing the iconic Shinra drum beat paired with that intense guitar riff is electrifying. And, like all great bosses in this game, it ramps up the intensity each and every phase, where, by the end, it creates a desperate tone that feels like both characters are giving their all to knock each other down. This is the most important fight in Cloud's life. And then the game adds a pointless Sephiroth boss fight right afterwards for no reason. That becomes the most important fight in Cloud's life, but my headcanon rips that entire endgame out of existence. So, alright, I've done enough yapping on why the songs are good. Here's my personal top 10 list between Remake and Rebirth soundtrack. Scores one of the most exciting set pieces on the PlayStation 4. This is a lethal adrenaline shot that has probably killed 5 infants just because of how unforgivably fast and intense it is. Starts as a heavy symphonic rock arrangement of that original techno piece, but introduces phases with the bombing mission, battle, and eventually boss theme as Shinra's forces send more and more out to stop your leave of Midgar. This song is 11 minutes long on the soundtrack. The one to start it all. I can't think of a more fitting way to start this incredible journey than this intense militaristic anthem, capturing the airtight feeling of the infiltration plus the scale and gravity of what you're doing. A tearjerker arrangement of both Aerith's theme and the main theme of Final Fantasy VII, obviously being 2 of the most important songs from the original game. This is some of the only music in Remake with no digital enhancements, making this feel like it came straight out of a symphony. Cause it did! Hearing those original themes performed beautifully by a real orchestra for the first time is an experience you only get once. Sure, those songs were used many times in the game before this moment, but they were subdued. This is a grand, proud, full arrangement of both of these songs. Genova's theme is a fan favorite from the original Final Fantasy VII, with its pumping synth lead melody catching the ear of anybody who hears it. The creature is a grotesque, shape-shifting monstrosity, and the music reflects the unconventional fight with a piece that can't keep a chord the same for more than a couple measures, mirroring the shape-shifting nature of the thing. Advent Children gave us a rock arrangement of that piece, so it's only natural for Remake's version to be a Dark Souls boss theme. What? Somehow they transformed that original heart pumper into a symphonic piece with an incredibly thick atmosphere, while still keeping the melody and original concept of the theme song intact as it constantly ebbs and flows, shuffling around the various pieces and parts of that original theme song. Then this happens. One of the greatest pieces of boss music from a video game, hands down. I After 4 incredible boss themes made by Shota Oshima that heavily riffs on themes introduced in the original game, Kinotalk is the arranger's first nearly wholly original piece, briefly using the Cosmo Candy motif on a small section of the song and nothing more. This one is the most atmospheric of his work so far, featuring didgeridoos and tribal chanting fit for an intense tribal warfare film. This is the hardest I've ever heard an orchestra push before, and I didn't even know it was possible to play that fast. The tone is incredibly frantic, mirroring the fear in our brave little dog cat's heart against the scariest opponent the creature has faced up to this point. Unfortunately, the song is only 5 minutes compared to the usual 7 or 8, so instead of giving this song a 10 million out of 10, I can only in good conscience give it a 1 million out of 10. Sorry, Shima. One of only 3 new pieces created by the legendary series composer Nobuo Uematsu, the original composer for all the music in Final Fantasy VII on the PS1. His age means that he can't keep coming back to score the music to the same scale as he could before, so he came back merely to consult the reorchestrated stuff and write just 3 new songs, one for each game in the trilogy. So naturally, he poured it all into these pieces. Hollow is Remake's ending music, being about Cloud's desire to keep the ones closest to him from harm. No Promises to Keep is Rebirth's main theme and is performed by Aerith, who wrote the song herself. It's about her thoughts on the journey and, after an entire lifetime of being trapped in the same quiet town under an imposing steel sky, how thankful she is to have met these friends that already mean more to her than anything else in the world. Square Enix pulled out all the stops to make this song and moment one of the greatest in Final Fantasy history. We've already talked about this one at length, so I'll say this instead. I've listened to this song about 1,000,000 times, yet to this day, I still get chills whenever they drop the battle theme. And while the focus and most exciting part of the piece is naturally that big moment at the end, you can't ignore the first 2 phases, featuring taking the song in brand new direction and later incorporating the bombing mission Shinra's theme into it. I don't think it's a stretch to say this is my favorite battle theme of all time. Now how about the boss themes? What more can be said about one of the most iconic songs in all of gaming? This orchestration manages to keep the intensity of the original song while adding an incredible energy to it. Keeping the philosophy of an orchestrated rock concert, this song sweeps the player off their feet for its entire 10-minute runtime. One of, if not the best final boss theme ever put in a video game. I can't think of a better way to cap off this incredible experience. Well... I've already talked about this song at length, but it's worth restating. This song and fight perfectly caps off the journey through Midgar and the infiltration of Shinra headquarters, featuring those timeless pieces from the original game on a scale that shouldn't even be possible. There's a reason that half of this top 10 list is dominated by the same arranger on a soundtrack with almost 30 talented people working on it. He just has a knack for this game and style of composing, and I couldn't wait to see what he did next. We didn't have to wait very long. Alright, let's go over the categories. This random bug boss is thrown onto Yuffie and Sonon, 2 ninjas from Wutai, a civilization at war with Shinra, tasked with stealing some stuff from Midgar, Shinra's big city. The song features 2 songs from the original game, Yuffie's theme and Wutai's theme, representing these Wutaians' drive to fight for their beloved home. Neither of these songs have any sense of urgency or intensity in their original form, so by all accounts, they should not work as a boss theme. Only Shima could pull that off. The boss is fought in 3 phases, and each phase ramps it up, with phase 3 breaking tempo and going wild. In a dominantly action-focused piece, in phase 3 the song breaks out into a superhero moment-esque triumphant anthem arrangement of Yuffie's own theme song. This is the biggest moment of her life, as small as that scale is, and she's not going down. The Wutai theme had been teased before in this DLC chapter, with the first couple of measures of the melody thrown into the beginning, then very quickly dropped. And Sonon's theme featuring a heavily, unsatisfyingly altered version of that theme. So when the fight begins and you hear the start of that Wutai theme, you'd think it's gonna follow the same suit. And it does, as before the song goes anywhere, it is interrupted by Yuffie's theme. This goes on when suddenly... It's funny, I didn't even really like the Wu-Tai theme in the original game, but how this anthem of a boss theme utilizes it is to a scale I have never experienced in my life. This song represents everything I adore about this game's soundtrack and the medium of music as a whole. It can capture tone and scale to an intensity that, were it absent, would feel so much weaker. Square Enix pulled all the stops to make what would be the most satisfying soundtrack for veterans and newcomers alike, while flexing their incredible budget and talent using the most iconic and beloved game they have ever produced. With the first two parts of this remake being this good musically, I cannot wait to see how this trilogy concludes.